I was like, man, like, is this something like this is like his style? Like, what's the whole point of writing like with such like thorough detail, but like not really speaking, and especially like compared to books with like Gentlemen in Moscow that we just read, where like they talk a little bit about what's going on, but then like the author will kind of jump into like kind of his own monologue about like his interpretations on the world. Like
Mm,
here, you don't really get any like Hemingway just like directly telling you anything. It's always just he's just narrating the story, and you just kind of get what you want out of it.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely felt kind of
Yeah.
like dense at times, but by the end it picks up for sure.
Yeah, yeah. It's a short book, but it definitely was. It felt draggy at some points.
Mm-hmm.
But so yeah, Didi, what were your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Sorry, one sec. I feel like, yeah, I agree. For the first like 100 pages, it kind of felt, I feel like you could summarize the first 100 pages into like two sentences, where it's just like he went out to fish, he could not find a fish, so he went further out. It's been 3 days, like nothing happened
Mm-hmm.
for the longest time. And then once he gets the fish and then the sharks come, I feel like initially I was like, wow, this book is like, I don't really get it. But then I felt so sad for him at the end that I realized I'd actually come to like care for the old man, or I felt for him, which I didn't realize while I was initially reading. I was like, okay, like we get it, he's fishing, like it's like these obscure descriptions of fishing, and I don't know anything about it. So I was like, I don't
Yeah.
any of these words, like I don't know what you're talking about initially. but
Mm,
um but yeah, by the end it definitely, like I definitely feel like the iceberg theory thing makes sense, because he writes very clearly and simply. um like there are no big words in the book really, like it's all just very simple short sentences. So yeah, definitely agree with that.
mm. Yeah, and I think actually, I was talking to Mylan a little bit, and he was just saying like maybe the demographic that Hemingway was maybe focusing were people who might actually have been familiar with those fishing terms, because I feel like it definitely
Yeah.
would offer you a whole different experience if you've actually been out there and seen, actually understand those words and know some of those feelings, because it's something you can actually like resonate with, as opposed to like we're just like, huh, okay, mast, okay, cool, I think that's what we
Yeah.
got, right? But
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, what were we, do you have anything to say, Chelsea?
No, no, I'm just agreeing.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I was, you know, um, I feel like each segment of the book can be broken up. So I'll just present one, and then you guys can ask some of the questions that you guys have. So one thing I was really confused with is I don't understand how the story would have been different with or without that kid. So I was really
Mm.
trying to understand like what is that, what does the kid add to this novel? What would the story be without him? Or what are some of your thoughts on
Yeah, I was definitely wondering about that as well, because I feel like um like this book is, I think, popularly interpreted as a metaphor for something. I didn't look up like what the popular metaphors were, but when I just googled "Old Man in the Sea," like one of the first questions that came up was like metaphor. So I was wondering, yeah, what the boy represented too. And I don't know if it's like the old man in his youth because he's so idealistic, or if it's like just having a connection with somebody, like somebody in your life, like the whole time that he's out in the sea, he thinks multiple times like, I wish the boy were here, I wish the boy were here. So it's like, even if you're going after something, like going after your dreams, which is what I guess the fish represented to him, like his purpose, it it didn't mean as much without like the comfort
that?
of like your friends and family, or like important people in your life maybe. But that's like one thing I thought. What did you guys think?
Yeah,
Nice,
I
that's a
mean,
good read.
he doesn't really talk to anyone in the entire book other than the boy. Like that's like the only like human connection we really see that the old man has all throughout. And yeah, exactly what you were saying. That like a lot of times in the when he was like doing stuff at sea, he would like say like, oh, if the boy were here X, or if the boy were here Y. So like it feels like that's meant to be significant because he's like always like saying like, oh, if he was here, he would have been able to do this. Like maybe it's like he kind of feels like a father son type of connection with like the
Yeah.
child, except he's also like regretful because like he has like a real family, and then like the child has to kind of go against his like actual family in order to like spend time with
Mm.
him. because like they think he's bad luck, but the child has a lot of respect for him and his skills.
And you bring up a good point, 'cause I didn't think about that. The only interaction that he has throughout the entire novel is with the boy. So by taking him out, I feel like even when I was reading Life of Pi, because that's has a similar section of where they're just in the ocean and there's nothing else. There's this certain feeling of like aloneness that when you're like in that ocean, you're like you don't talk to anyone, you're just talking to yourself. You could go crazy. But if that's how he was on the land too, I don't think that feeling of aloneness in the ocean would really be accentuated, as opposed to like if he just never talked to anyone throughout the entire book and they're just like, okay, now he's in the ocean. It's just like, okay, he was alone all the time, doesn't matter. But I feel like the presence of having that boy was like, okay, he does have connection. He is some level of grounded at home. So being out in sea is relatively different because of that. And I think only because you said that, Chelsea, that even like, okay, that makes sense. I think that, yeah, without him, you would have just been like, this guy's a loner all the time, you know?
Yeah.
All the time.
It's like that missing link.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was also interesting because at the end where he's been out for 2 days, I think at that point he's like, oh, like I wonder if anybody is gonna worry. And he was like, well, who would worry but the boy? And then he also says, oh, but also the other villagers because they're nice. And then at the end you find out when the there's like all these other fisher people, like he has this whole community actually. But I thought it was an interesting choice that he never mentions them, he only mentions the boy, because at the end he's like, yeah, like of course they would have sent out a search party for me. Like everybody notices that he's gone and he has like actually this whole community. So it's not like he only has one friend, he has like all these other people in his life. But it was interesting that in his time of like maybe like his big moment of catching the fish, like he was only thinking of, I guess, like the most important person in his life or whatever like the boy represents to him rather than his whole community.
Mm.
Did you guys think, and do you guys notice that or think anything about that? Because I thought it was a little weird or like interesting. Yeah, because I thought he was alone. Oh, actually, like everybody cares about him and everybody like felt for him at the end. So
I think like to some extent like the reason behind that is like it kind of felt like he's a pretty like prideful guy. So even though like he's getting older, he doesn't like want to accept help. Like even like with the boy in like some of the earlier interactions, you can see him like kind of like lying to him, like saying like, "Oh, don't worry, I have a newspaper," and the kid is like, "I don't know if he really had it," and he was just saying it. Or like he's like saying like, "Oh yeah, don't help me, don't do this." So like even though he's like growing old, it seems like he kind of like he doesn't want to let go of his like younger days when he was a great fisherman and he had good luck and he was like, you know, respected. And like even though like those people they care about him, he like doesn't want to take their pity. He wants to like be able to do it by himself and like prove that, yeah, I still got it.
Yeah, and I think I didn't explicitly notice what you said, Aditi, but what I remember feeling like when I got to the end, I was weirdly like comforted by the fact that people cared. You know, like, oh, like people actually did look, and like that whole part, I didn't be like, I didn't actually explicitly, come to the realization you did, but I was like, oh, okay, it's nice that someone cared. You know, I felt that at least.
Yeah, but I think the thing about the pride actually makes a lot of sense, and maybe that's why he like spent so much time with the boy and he was thinking about the boy so much because the boy idolizes him. So the boy still sees him as this great fisherman. So to the boy, he is that like strong, powerful fisherman that he wants to be himself. But I feel like everybody else in their community knows that he's old. Like the boy's family is like, he doesn't have luck anymore. You should go with the other people. And he doesn't want to like interact with any of those other people in as much as the boy because they know that like it kind of, I guess, interferes with his pride in a way. But the boy looks up to him so much. So
yeah, that actually is good analysis right there.
That makes sense actually.
Nice. Okay, I'll toss up another question. See, I wrote it down. Give me a sec. Okay, so when I started reading the book, I kind of got the feel that the idea that I was getting from the book is don't overcommit yourself to a certain goal where it's like, even if you're, don't be afraid to cut your losses. Like it's okay. Like if you feel like you're getting a lot of negative from something, don't overdo it and be like, I have to get it done, I have to get it done, to where it like really impacts your life, and it's okay to let things go. And that's kind of what I was understanding until he had actually caught the fish, at which point I was like, okay, now I'm confused, right? So I was wondering, until he had caught the fish, what was your take on what he was doing? Was it something that was admirable, or was it something that was kind of like, what are you doing?
I feel like I thought it was gonna end with him dying. I was like, oh my god, far out, like, and he's so old and like I don't know, like I thought he wasn't gonna make it. Like I thought he was going kind of crazy and um I don't know. Yeah, I thought the point was that like he overcommitted himself or he had like too many goals or like he had too much ambition or too much pride and he wasn't able to just turn back empty-handed for like the 85th day or whatever. So yeah, that's what I thought, I guess, about that at the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like he knew that he was kind of overcommitting himself, I feel like at a point, but like he kind of has this characteristic of almost like blind faith, where like when his mind even like wanders to like thinking about like, oh, maybe this is too much, like maybe I'm not gonna make it if I try and do this. He like immediately like he shuts that thought down himself. He's like, no, I can't think like that. Like I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. So like, part of it just felt like he was just like super determined, like so determined that like he would let nothing stop him, especially like his himself.
Yeah.
And maybe that's also like tied to his pride of like being a great fisherman. Like, he wanted to prove it to himself too.
Yeah, because I kind of felt exactly how Aditi felt, where it was like, okay, like it kind of feels like he's gonna keep chasing this fish, and either it's not a fish, it's like a rock or something that's just moving, and he's just gonna end up dying and being like, okay, well, I kind of wasted my life. I should have done something better. And for some reason, that's how I thought it would end up, But as soon as he caught the fish and then actually ended up making it back home alive, I was like, okay, now there's an interesting question, and it's that is this man considered successful in his endeavors? Like, is what he did at the end goal, like, would you consider this man successful or not in like what he was attempting to do? Or I guess I don't know whether I mean subjectively or objectively if he's successful, but I was kind of confused at that. So what was your thought on his entire endeavor at the end of the story? Was what he did end up, I don't even know how to define successful. So yeah, if you could try, giving your own definition of successful, and then maybe tell me whether you think he was, what your opinion on that is.
I'd say like maybe you could define his success as like whether he was able to prove to himself and his community that like he still had it, like like he still got it. And I think like in that endeavor, yeah, he was successful because like honestly, like the things that he did were actually pretty incredible, right? Like he caught this like huge fish, and then after that he kills like a shark with a harpoon, and then he kills like two more sharks with like an oar tied to a knife, and then he beats like two more sharks to death, like, and he's an old man, so like like despite like all these like difficulties he faced, like he still survived first of all, and like no one's gonna like think that he's lying when he said like what went down. So like in that way he did succeed, but in terms of like actually changing his station in life, like nothing really changes after that other than maybe like his own perception of himself, like realizing like, okay, yeah, I broke my bad luck, but that might be enough.
I think I would actually like disagree that he he felt like he broken his bad like at the, I don't know, because he got the fish but then he wasn't able to make it back with the fish. So maybe like that's like I feel like to him that felt worse maybe because I guess this kind of brings in another thing that I was thinking about, but you know how he was talking about if he was like worthy of killing the fish, or like he was talking about if it made sense for him to do it. I feel like he really respects the fish, so he felt even worse than if he hadn't caught anything because he killed this fish for nothing. Like he killed it just for a bunch of sharks to eat it rather than like
Yeah.
to make money off of it. But then even if he made, I feel like that's another thing he was like thinking about. He was like, do the people who are eating it deserve to eat this fish? And he was like, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. I feel like he doesn't, I don't know. I think he might not think that he's successful at the end.
And I think that's like the main question here. It's like when you define successful, it's like, what are you defining it as? So the way Choksi had said it, he had made it seem where you guys both kind of said the complete opposite thing. Some the Chokes people kind of may be wrong. Maybe fix me if I'm wrong. It kind of felt like what you were saying is that he felt like he was successful, but from the society's perspective, he wasn't that successful. He didn't really change anything. He didn't bring anything to grow in terms of money and society. Aditi said the complete opposite, where it was like, okay, at least like the society kind of felt like, okay, he still caught this fish and it was crazy, but he himself may not have felt successful. And I think like that's where like it does, that is the really interesting question. It's like, like, how do you define success? Is it some sort of like, what does the society think of me? Or is it just like improving my own perception of myself? You know, is that all a success is? Like any success is just, I view myself differently than I did before. And it's really even hard to tell whether that different is better or worse. But like, yeah, so I think that's what I was really confused. I was like, wait, is this man successful or not? Like, you know, what, and so I was thinking about that for a while, but it did not come. Yeah, you guys both have interesting takes though. Did y'all have any like after hearing what DT said, Chokesy, you have any, what do you think now?
I mean, I think like based on what you're saying, like it's kind of like two different types of successes, right? So like, you know, any individual will have their own like idea of what success means to them. And then like within like society, you know, there'll be like some general consensus of what it means to be successful as well. So like, you know, they're both are like exist. But I guess what matters is like which one you want to place more importance on, like from society's perspective or from the individual's perspective.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And but also like
yeah, which
I'm my thing will change the topic. So
change it. Unless
I think Aditi wanted to say one more.
Wait, I just have one more question on that. Which do you guys think like he values more? Like, because he's super prideful, so I'm not sure. Like, does he value his own perception of himself or society's perception of himself?
From my understanding of like my read, he gave me the impression of someone who primarily derived his own perception from how others perceived him. And I think, but I could be wrong. I may just be putting my own, you know.
Like at the same time though, like, you know, in the beginning, everyone was saying that like, oh, he has bad luck, he's kind of washed up. But like he didn't take that to heart. He was like, nah, I just need like another day. Like the next time is the day I'm gonna catch a fish. Like he didn't let like that reputation like get to his head.
But I feel like the idea of, yes, that is true. But I do think the idea of like taking what the society does believe of you to heart, as if it's something that even has any sort of value to some extent, says that you value what society says of you. You know, so even if it was like, I don't believe you, but I'm going to prove you wrong, it's still placing weight on what.
Yeah, it's still like, you're still being affected by what society does. Like you're not totally independent from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But yeah, so what?
Yeah, I don't know. I think actually.
Yeah, what were you gonna say?
Oh, okay. I think he actually values like maybe what the boy thinks of him. Like, I still don't know fully what the boy represents, but I think that's kind of what kept him going. Maybe is like thinking that the boy still thinks he's like some great fisherman, even if everyone else already like wrote him off and was like, okay, he's kind of old and unlucky. But yeah, I guess it could be like all of those.
Maybe this is how in the 1950s you just introduced the concept of homosexuality or something.
Yeah.
The dude's in love with the boy.
Like even if like even sometimes the boy would like say some certain things to the fisherman, but he would like brush it off, saying like, nah, like you're just like saying this to gas me up, but I don't even believe it.
Yeah.
Like the boy would always be saying like great things about the fisherman, like, oh, you need to teach me your wisdom, this or that. And he's like, no, you know, you have good luck, you know how to do it yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, that is true.
I mean, so like I think that talking about the point that Didi was talking about earlier, that I also noticed and I thought it was really interesting was like how the old man talks about like the different fishes in the sea, and how he talks about like, I actually have a couple highlighted, like I can pull them up, but okay. Let me just find it. Like there's short little parts that I probably highlighted. But yeah, he like definitely says like they're more noble than humans sometimes, or like, you know, I'm just smarter, I'm wiser, but he's like stronger and more brave. Like, you know, there's lots of like personification of these fishes. And same thing for the sharks as well. He says the sharks are evil, but the swordfish was hella great. Okay. Let's see. You guys can, I don't know if you have any like immediate reactions.
Yeah, he does do a good job of that. I felt weirdly attached to that fish at some point. You know, even if it's like to a tiny level, it's an interesting relationship. And I think, okay, yes, I have something to add after you. Yes, I do want to talk about the animals.
I'm kind of struggling. I don't know where to find my highlights anymore.
So to commit, did you just have to put your deposit down?
No, I just had to say, like, accept this offer.
Oh, nice. But doesn't that mean you can still?
Yeah, I haven't done the deposit yet. I think I have to do that next. But yeah.
No, nice. Congratulations. Big teams.
Anyways,
I just said big
Yeah.
teams.
yeah. We're moving, dude.
Yeah. It's fitting because you're Indian.
Yeah. Why?
Because Indians eat rice.
Oh, like that. Yeah, dude. Anania's college is called Brown. So it's like a brown.
That's funny.
Okay.
That'd be so funny. There's another called Jasmine. That'd be hilarious. That'd be hilarious. Basmati. Yo, what college you get into? I just got into Basmati, bro.
That would be lit.
That'd be so troll. That'd be funny, though.
So he says, "You are killing me, fish," the old man thought, "but you have a right to. Never have I seen a greater or more beautiful or a calmer or more noble thing than you, brother. Come on and kill me. I do not care who kills who."
That man is sus. That's actually so troll. Like, who says that to a fish?
That's what, like, he actually feels like so passionate about like how like noble these fishes are. Like he has a lot of respect for them.
That's
Yeah.
true, yeah.
And then later on he says like, "I'm only better than him through trickery and he meant me no harm." So he's like, actually like he feels guilty for killing the fish even.
Yeah, he said this part. He was like, "Am I smarter or stronger, or is it just that I'm more like well armed or something?" You know?
Mhm. Yeah.
And yeah, yeah. So yeah, I guess like on that
Yeah.
note of what so sorry, Choki, was there a question or?
No, just like so like what are your thoughts on like how he has like this like interesting relationship with like the fish that he tries to catch? Like, I mean, I guess that might be something that's like common for like fishermen since they're always around fish and like, you know, they probably have like more intense feelings towards them and stuff. But I don't know. What do you think the author is trying to say something through this? Like, yeah.
I think you bring up a really interesting point. Like, is there a difference between people who, you know, farm or hunt and feel the certain relationship with the animals as opposed to like another type of farmer who has like, I'm just giving a random, I could be completely wrong. Someone who has like 1,000 chickens and then kills them mercilessly, like without even being like, I actually care about a single of these chickens. They're just food. I don't care about them at all. Like, do you think they're, so yeah, so I guess like, yeah, is there the fact that someone does have this like intimate relation, you'd feel that they, is that okay? So that's one thing I actually had written down when I was writing. I was like, does it matter? Like he actually says something like that along the line where he's like, "Oh, like I love you so much, which is why I'm gonna kill you." I'm like, then what does that even mean? You know, like can you even do both at the same time? Like, can you really kill something if you really actually respect it and love it? Like, it kind of just seems like some sort of like talk to just talk.
Yeah, because I like wrote this quote down. I think he was like asking himself maybe why he killed the fish after he did it. And at first he was like, "Oh, you did it so that people can eat or whatever." And then he was like, "No, you killed him for pride and because you are a fisherman." So like he's like thinking, like at first maybe he tries to justify what he's doing to this creature that he really respects by being like, oh, like I need this for food, like we all need this for food. And he's like, no, like be honest with yourself, what you're really doing is you're killing him. Like maybe like it doesn't matter that you respect him so much, you killed him
Yeah.
for your own pride and because like it's your job, sort of.
Yeah.
Like this is
Yeah.
who he is as a fisherman, so that's what he
I
did.
actually found this exact the exact excerpt where he like has this monologue. I can like read it real quick and then we
Yeah.
can talk about
Yeah.
it more. Okay, so he says, it is silly not to hope, he thought. Besides, I believe it is a sin. Do not think about sin. There are enough problems without it. And I also have no understanding of it. I have no understanding of it, and I am not sure that I believe in it. Perhaps it was a sin to kill the fish. I suppose it was, even though I did it to keep me alive and feed many people. But then everything is a sin. Do not think about sin. It is much too late for that, and there are people who are paid to do it. Let them think about it. You were born to be a fisherman, as the fish was born to be a fish. San Pedro was a fisherman, and he's the father to the great DiMaggio. But he liked to think about all things that he was involved in, since there was nothing to read and he did not have a radio. He thought much, and he kept on thinking about sin. You did not kill the fish only to keep alive and to sell for food, he thought. You killed him for pride and because you were a fisherman. You loved him when he was alive, and you loved him after. If you love him, is it not a sin to kill him, or is it more? You think too much, old man, he said aloud. And then he goes on to say, like, oh, but you enjoyed killing the shark. But he's a scavenger, and he's just an appetite. He's not beautiful and noble and doesn't know fear. Then he says, I killed him in self-defense, and I killed him well. But
That's an awesome
yeah.
excerpt, actually.
Mm-hmm.
There's like so
Oh,
much
and
to
then,
talk
okay,
about.
there's
just
one more
in-
paragraph right here. So he also says, besides, he thought, everything kills everything else in some way. Fishing kills me exactly as it keeps me alive. The boy keeps me alive, he thought. I must not deceive myself too much.
Yeah, no, I think both of those excerpts have so much conversation to just be had. Can I just throw the first? Can I throw?
Yeah,
one?
yeah, go for it.
Okay, so something I think a lot about is I think one thing I personally had felt like I was vegetarian for a year, and like when I like talked to a lot of other people, it was kind of interesting in that if I'm vegetarian for the sake of being vegetarian for my own reasons, that's different. But I think like there's this moral superiority that oftentimes comes with people who are vegetarian, where it's like because I'm vegetarian, like look, I'm so morally righteous, like I care about these animals, I don't eat animals, blah 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 blah. And I feel like that's where it kind of gets a little confusing because okay, so let's say we do like what you're saying here, like let's say there is some sort of like moral righteousness that comes with like, oh, I care so much about these animals and whatnot. I think that it gets confusing when it's like, okay, one, what if it really does come down to your survival versus the animals? At that same time, do you still carry on this sort of like more, conflicts where you're like, okay, all life is equal. That means if I need to kill 3 animals to keep mine alive, that's not worth it because I'm killing 3 for 1. So therefore, I'm down to die. Another one that comes into that is like, okay, how do you like uh, I think like picking between animals is another one. Like a lot of Americans are like, we would never eat dogs, we'd never eat, but it's like, okay, you kill pigs, if it's based on intelligent pigs are more intelligent dogs. There's just so many other questions of like, you kill all these other animals, why not dogs and cats as well? Why not, And so that's another question that comes into like the eating moral superiority. And the other one is like, okay, I can't think of there was another one I had in mind, but I can't, yeah. But you guys know what I'm saying? Oh, yes, okay. So if I think there's moral superiority in not eating animals, do I think the animals that do eat other animals to survive are like morally like less? Like, do I think like lions are less than like herbivores? Like that just doesn't even make sense. To be like, oh, a lion is like less than, because it just does it. But I guess you can make the argument that like, oh, like it can't eat plants or something like, I guess you could start making those arguments like whether humans have to, you know what I'm saying? Sorry, those are all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just what are your thoughts on when you combine moral superiority into, which I guess is what this question comes down to, like how can you feel okay to kill the sharks and stuff, but not feel okay to, kill the fish? That's kind of odd.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I think actually from the fisherman's perspective, like this is a little different from like the average person, right? But to him, like, especially talking about like between different animals, to him, it's like, did you fight with that other animal nobly, right? Like, say I want to eat like this fish, right? Like, did I have a proper fight with him, or did I like get the fish through trickery, right? So like, if you get it in some kind of like less noble way, then it's considered more of a sin. So, and then right after he says the sharks are like foolish and like like unjust creatures, because all they do is like they just like wait to find some like dead carcass and then just scavenge and just go eat it, like without actually like doing the work of like fighting this like beautiful fish, right? So that's why he like says the sharks are like pieces of shit. Like I felt good killing them because like they deserve to die for like what they were trying to do to like my beautiful fish. But on the other hand, like since he actually like had this like long drawn out fight with the marlin, he feels like he actually like achieved like he like respected it and like fought with it well. Something like
Yeah,
that.
I guess it's funny because like the entire essence of fishing is trickery, but
Yeah.
no, I get what you're saying. like, like, yeah, I guess it's in. Yeah, what are your thoughts, Aditi?
Um, yeah, I feel like it's um really interesting, and I think like going back to your analogy of like vegetarianism versus not. So I guess like what the fisherman did, like what Choksi was mentioning, where he like fought with the fish, is like the equivalent of somebody like hunting for their own food versus like somebody that just scavenges, as in somebody that just like purchases meat that somebody else like killed and then eats it. So in that, I don't really know where I'm going with this, but that's just like what I thought as like a kind of similar sort of situation. But I feel like when the fisherman talks about sin, like when he says like, oh, what he did with the fish is different than what the shark did, in the end, is it really? Because in the end the fish is still dead. So like, what's that saying? Like your intent doesn't matter, the outcome matters.
Like the ends justify the means kind of thing.
Ends justify the means. Or like, no, like, when people are like, I feel like I've seen this a lot, like in the news lately, where somebody does something racist, but they're like, "Oh, I didn't mean to be racist," but then it's like your intent didn't matter. What happened, like the outcome matters
Is what
more.
matters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what matters. So like with the fish, like the fisherman is like, "Oh, I'm different than the shark because like X, Y, Z," but in the end, they both were gonna just eat the fish. So
Yeah, like how
there.
much you really love it and care, about it.
Yeah, like does it matter that you like
Yeah,
respected him and cared for
exactly.
him or whatever? Like in the end, you still ate him, or
Yeah,
you were going to eat him.
yeah.
Mm.
And in the conversation of this fish, one thing I was really thinking about is, let's just say, for example, this could be completely wrong, but let me pause it. Maybe that the purpose of all life, and let's just say that there's a metric that we are just making up for fun for the sake of this conversation, that a better world is one where every species has its best population really doing the best. Okay. So the best species is not where just one species is thriving, but every species has like its, most thriving species really doing the best. So I was thinking, okay, is it, are we doing a disservice to the world by having that fish die and that fisherman live? Or would the world have been a better place if that fish lived and the fisherman died? Like I feel like when the fisherman was talking about you're the greatest fish ever to have lived on this planet, it's like, damn, that fish is a lot more valuable to this earth based on that made up metric I made, as opposed to him existing. He's just another fisherman at that point. He's old, like whatever. But that fish seemed to have been like one of the greatest fish all time. Like it seems like it the fisherman living is actually sad, as opposed to it would have been better in that metric for that fish to have lived. But if you value human life over all of the life, then it's definitely good that Santiago lived. But I guess like it's like, what do you value? Like if you value all life, then it's sad that special fish died. Because what if that fish is like like take all those human beings that you think are great, and you're like, Einstein, put all those people together and be like, what if that fish was that, and it just killed it just for fun,
Mm.
well, nothing came out of its life. Well, if Santiago died. I guess that's something I always think about, because like whenever I see animals, I'm like, you guys don't know the difference between me, you. They don't understand the difference between us. Whether I die, whether you die, it doesn't matter to them. But it's like in our world, in the human world, it's so important which of us lives. Like we think it's so important, but in the same way, where if an animal dies, we don't really care. It's like if a horse dies, okay, that even if it was the greatest horse of all time, we wouldn't even bother. We wouldn't even be all right, the horse died. And it's just crazy where it's like, what if all of our lives are equally important? And it's like, dang, like I don't know. That's sorry, yeah, tangent. There's no question, but
Mm.
you know what I mean, though.
Yeah.
Like, is that fish more useful to the planet than that fisherman?
Yeah. Could be.
Yeah.
Um. Yeah. It's pretty crazy though. The whole
Yeah.
story is him just going out, fighting with this fish, just coming back and just being like fucked up after like having to fight like hella sharks and this one fish.
Yeah, and it
It's
was
pretty
all for
badass,
nothing.
honestly.
It is
And
badass.
yeah, it was badass, but in the end, like shit, it was just the
It was
fish.
so sad. Yeah, it seems so pointless.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So what are your
yeah,
thoughts? So at the end of the day, did he make the right decision to incur all those pains? Because he did lose a lot of things, right? He said like even if he was able to sell it,
yeah.
maybe he would get his ore back. He would buy all those things. So he did incur a lot of losses. But do you think he did the right thing by going out that long, incurring all those pains on his hand, everything, or would it just been better for him to come home?
Yeah, I think it would have been better for him to come home, but even he realizes that, right? Like towards the end, he always like asks himself, like, is this real or am I just dreaming? And then as the sharks start eating more and more of the meat, like he keeps saying, like, I like hoped even more that it was a dream. Like I hoped even more it was a dream. I shouldn't have come. And he keeps like apologizing to the fish, and this is the fate that befell him. It's like at the end, he himself, I'm pretty sure he's like well aware that like, like going all the way out there to sea, like it just wasn't worth it, like I fucked up. But now I just have to live with my decision. Hopefully it's
Yeah.
a dream, but
And I think that's what I very much resonated with when I was thinking about. I was just like, dang, I was like, if I was in that situation, I would have turned back, you know, 30 minutes in. I would have been like, all right, it's not worth it. And it really made me question. I was like, okay, like, imagine if the story did turn differently, right? He ended up catching this fish, his entire life changed. Like, at what probability are decisions like that a good decision to take? So, like, if there's like a return of like 5% of your entire life, everything changing, but you have to do something like that. At what point in your brain is a decision like that a good idea? And I was like, okay, thinking about it, I was like, I feel like I'm a very risk averse individual, like where it's like that percentage would need to be close to like 70, 80, where, the return would be that probable for me to
yeah.
be like, okay, I'm willing to take some sort of risk like this. And I just feel like he did it. His risk factor in that specific decision was very low. The actual probability of him, or maybe he didn't think that. I don't know, but it made me really question, like, because if you ever want to do something crazy and not just be completely mediocre and average, you have to take some sort of crazy risk where you're doing something that is just different, and a lot of times different doesn't always lead to great results or, whatever result you wanted. So it's like, but I feel like that leap of faith is what he took. It just happened to not work out. But that's completely just part of everyone's process. But I guess what people would say is the art of success is in that act of the leap of faith, more than like the end result. The leap of faith is the part that people should be applauded for, not for the actual end outcome.
Yeah, actually, like I feel like that's one of the big themes that I actually got out of the book. So like there's like a lot of things that you can say like that are bad about the old man, like his pridefulness, this and that, but he definitely has like an iron will and like that faith in himself, and he's actually able to achieve like a very great feat, right? Like I mean, yeah, sure the sharks got him and stuff, but like no one would think that this like old guy with like a little ass boat would be able to go and catch that huge of a fish, and he was still against all odds able to do it just because he like had faith in himself and he dispelled like any negative thoughts and like he truly believed in his abilities as a fisherman. So like this like I do kind of feel like inspired to some extent by like just how much of an iron will that this guy has.
Mm. And on that note, I just kind of came up with an analogy or metaphor for what the sharks could represent. It's kind of like anybody who's reaches that level of success. It's like, while you're coming up, there's nobody to bring you down necessarily, But when you hit your peak and you hit whatever you want, that's when all these other people come, all these other critics come and try to like slowly bring you down to where you're back to nothing, And it's kind of like, if you value your success and what you yourself have accomplished before any of that, where the end outcome is not important, then you yourself will be like, okay, I still did that. It's still like I still accomplished that at some point, whatever the end outcome is. So yeah, I guess that's yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. What's the video you said?
Chelsea?
Oh, It's just a cool video you can watch afterwards.
Okay.
I was just like looking at like a Reddit thread that was talking about it, and this is a cool video. It just has
Ooh,
like
okay.
sketches of it.
Okay, I'll check this out.
Um,
I
yeah,
also saw
feel like-
thug notes on this.
Okay, so one quote that I wrote down was, "A man is not made for defeat. A man can be destroyed, but not defeated." So I feel like that, and like the quote about you killed him for pride and because you were a fisherman, like I feel like he felt like his purpose, or like what he was a fisherman. So when he had those like 80 something days where he hadn't caught something, he was like he didn't really feel like a fisherman anymore. So that's kind of maybe what like motivated him and what allowed him to take the risk that he took to like get this fish, because he was like he needed it to reclaim a sense of like who he was, kind of, because he was like, I like whatever, man is not made for defeat. So he's like, I can't be defeated. I can't just like hang up my fishing line and be like, all right, I'm gonna retire. I'm not, because that's like all he has always been. So maybe like the course of this book, he was kind of destroyed in a way, right? Like he lost a lot of his stuff. Like he was super in pain and stuff by the end, but he wasn't, I guess, defeated, because he still got the fish and he still gets to claim that he's a fisherman who caught it.
Yeah, that's a good connection. Like he made it was almost, I guess, an act of like self-destruction then, right? Like he was full knowing that yeah, he might be destroyed, but he knew he like made the choice that I'd rather be destroyed than be defeated. And kind of, I mean, I think he messed up his hands like really bad. So like maybe he will not even be able to fish. Like
No, and that distinction is huge though. I mean,
Mhm.
it's crazy. Like, because I think for a lot of people, their primary goal in life is just to extend their life. Like everything decisions that they made is just, how do I live for as long as possible? It's not whether I live a fulfilling life, whether I live a happy life. It's just to live for long. So like actually making the distinction between defeat and destruction is like, I think like very ahead of its time, you know, because it's like, if people lived like that, the world would be different, you know, where it was like
yeah,
you have some sort of pursuit or goal, and that's what matters. It's not just about elongating your life, and that could in itself be a useless goal. Like living to 100 and doing nothing may actually be but I guess at the end of there's no objective scale. But if there was, it could actually potentially be less worthwhile of a life than living to 25 and doing some great, like, you know, some nuts, you know? And
yeah.
I think that distinction between defeat and destruction is yeah, pretty crazy.
Yeah, so actually like now looping that back to the beginning when we were talking about like was he successful? Now like when we think of it from this angle, that he was not defeated, he chose to be destroyed rather than to be defeated. Like maybe he was successful then, right?
Yeah,
Right.
definitely.
Yeah. Because he could have like easily turned back that first day and like it would have been fine. Like he could have gone out the next day, like done something for the rest of his life where he just like goes out and doesn't get anything. Like it seemed like he came from a nice community, so people would probably like feed him or whatever, even if he never
Yeah.
was able to catch a fish again. But
Yeah,
that he didn't want that. Like he was like, that isn't.
That's defeat to him.
Yeah, that's defeat. Oh, this is like kind of a side note, but I think Hemingway killed himself.
nice.
So what was that? So maybe that was him being like destroyed but not defeated. I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know much
actually-
about like how he died or like anything like that, but I know he shot himself. So,
That's actually really sad though.
yeah.
That's crazy.
I also read that like when he wrote this book, like Hemingway himself was like starting to get a little older. So like he like projected his own like struggles with old age onto like the old men in the book.
Mm.
No, it's honestly like I probably have said this earlier, but I remember like I was reading a little bit about like what are the most like common professions that lead to suicide, and like all the top one was poets, and then like from there on it was like the top 4 or 5 were all like creative outlet like professions, and it was just like dang, like it just seems like people who are drawn to like I didn't know that actually that he killed himself, but it's crazy, man. Like it's just like so many people who like create. It seems like we were talking about this last time too. 'Cause Whitney was like, "Can we read a happy book?" And we were just talking about how like a lot of times it seems like a lot of these really great creations of work oftentimes come from a place of like desperation, sadness, you know. And it's like it sucks. It's just it is very sad that like I don't know. I guess you got
Mhm.
defeated then, right? That's not. You got destruction. Yeah, you got defeated. That's for sure defeat. You just gave
No,
Really?
up.
it's like destroyed though, not defeated, right?
No, but I feel like you get defeated by the struggles against life, the fight against life. You know.
Maybe, but maybe he wanted. I don't know. Actually, I don't
Like
know.
from an artistic sense, right? Like, 'cause he's a writer.
Yeah, I guess it's like
Yeah,
Like maybe he was like, rather than get washed up or whatever, like I'd rather just like
yeah,
end my journey here. I don't know.
no, that's true. That's big facts though. That I feel like people don't talk about that, but I think that's a. I personally feel like that's a argument that can be made. Like I don't think suicide necessarily always has to be some sort of like I hate my life. You know, like I don't think it necessarily always has to come from that place where it's always a bad decision to have made.
Oh
but
no, he was
I
down
think
bad actually.
that
I'm reading this right now. It says, but we do know at the end of his life he was suffering in mind and body. He had weathered malaria, dysentery, skin cancer, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and he had 6 serious concussions, which left him with headaches, mental fogginess, ringing in his ears, and a traumatic brain injury. He was almost killed in 2 separate plane crashes, which ruptured his liver, spleen, kidneys, several limbs, dislocated his shoulder, crushed vertebra, burns all over his body, and cracking his skull. He was in constant pain, which he dealt with by drinking even more heavily than he usually did. So like apparently he
And
was just like in so much pain and
holy
suffering, I guess,
shit.
that he like decided to commit suicide.
Yeah, which I guess this kind of ties in with when breath becomes air. Um, because like Paul was saying something about how as a brain surgeon he needs to make decisions for other people about like if their life will be worth living like after surgeries.
Mm.
So it's kind of like the same thing where like you you won't be like you're choosing I guess to like destroy their life rather than have them just be defeated by like all their pain.
mm,
um I don't know, like I guess that kind of makes sense if this book is sort of related to him getting old. Like he's kind of thinking of like the purpose of life, like maybe for him it's like being an author, but for the
mm,
old man it was like being a fisherman. So
more
like
than
how do you sort of sustain yourself, like what is the purpose of life, like what makes it meaningful, kind of.
damn, the inner book connection. Nice. That's a good one
Yeah,
though. Like where
yeah,
like he like the fisherman may think that outside of fishing like life is not worth living. Therefore, in that action, like there's I guess yeah. I guess even the way we were talking about it earlier, it was as if like not understanding that it's possible for someone to have that as the only thing that they measure their life on. Like it's not about living or because at the beginning of the conversation, I feel like that's how I was approaching it, where it was like, well, yeah, well, he's not benefiting like monetarily or like his health or
yeah,
whatever. But dang, yeah, I guess it really asks you to kind of reshift the way you think about everything.
yeah, because like for real the little boy would have supported him, like he really loved and respected him, so he definitely would have like bought him food every day, even if
Mm,
the guy was like, okay, I'm not going to be a fisherman anymore, I'm just going to chill and like watch or read about baseball or whatever. Like the little boy would have been like, all right, like I'm going to bring you food every day, like I'm going to make sure you're okay. But then he didn't consider that a life worth living, even
dang,
if he's old.
I got some food for thought for
Yeah.
sure. And I guess at the end of the day, it all ties down to how simple the story is, you know? And
Mm.
Hmm.
I definitely would be interested in reading more in a while or in a
Yeah. No, it's like a very simple story with like, like not like super eloquent writing, right? Like he's just like writing like very like bare bones, but it's still like it's like pretty powerful in like the way it makes you feel like at like certain moments. So
Yeah. I
I can
miss the
see
old
like
man for
why
sure.
he's like because he won I think like a Nobel Prize or like the Pulitzer Prize, whatever the book one is for this book.
Wow.
Hmm.
So it's like definitely highly acclaimed.
For this
Yeah.
specific book?
Yeah, for Old Man in the Sea. Like this
Oh
is what
wow.
people consider like one of his masterpieces, and there's another one called like For Whom the Bell Tolls.
Wow. I didn't know that. Oh cool. That's dope.
Yeah. Yeah, I really thought this book was boring for like
Yeah.
most of it, honestly.
Yeah.
sure.
Like
that's
until
why.
the end, I was like,
Until he
what
caught the
is
fish, I thought it was boring, and then my interest got piqued.
Yeah,
I skipped a few pages before for sure. Not gonna
yeah, I
lie.
skimmed
Yeah.
it.
Sometimes I like
Yeah.
skim through and I like didn't read all the words, but I'm like, you know what? Yeah, it's like some details
It's the
about like
same
fucking
thing. It's
comic
literally the same
books.
thing. Like
Yeah.
when I got to the end of the page, I was like, wow, I didn't read it, but I actually know basically what happened.
Yeah.
Usually, like
Just
you
a
miss
lot of
out on something, you know? But yeah.
Dude, yeah, I think like some people read this in high school, but I feel like if I had to read it for a class, I would have just thought it was like
I would
kind
have
of boring.
hated it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would have been like, what is like we would have been sitting in APANG like trying to say raise your hand for like points or whatever. It was like, oh,
I have nothing to say.
Yeah, I guess like the one question I'd ask is those parts that we skimmed, how do you think it would have changed if it wasn't there?
God.
Hmm.
I think like the length of the book kind of shows you the efforts he goes to get this fish. Like if it had just been like if they summarized all of that into like one page or like half a page and been like he was out there for 3 days, like he traveled with the fish for like through blah blah blah, like he ate this and he ate that, rather than having you go through pages and pages and doing that. Like this kind
Yeah.
of shows you the amount of time that he spent.
Yo, actually, okay, I'm reading this fact right here. It says it's reported that he wrote and rewrote all portions of The Old Man and the Sea more than 200 times before he was ready to release it.
Dang.
Which is
So-
crazy because you would think that, like, you know, like he just wrote it real quick, right? Like he's just writing about like a super detailed story about a fisherman. But like all this stuff that seems bare bones is like it's like very intentionally his writing style. So he's like really trying to create this aesthetic that we see in this book. And I think it's really important to him that like there isn't any symbolism. So like, you know, omitting certain things will like highlight other things.
Mm.
So he doesn't want to like, you know, just like remove things that might be less important. He just wants to tell like the story purely as is and then let the reader have his own take on it.
Yeah, I guess I wonder what his rewrites were. Like reading that very first copy would probably be interesting, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But it's awesome. Like he really never infers anything. Like never like, oh, like this is what you should think. Like this is what's good or bad. Like anything like that. It's really cool actually.
Yeah.
Very different. Yeah. Because it could be a children's tale. You know, this could easily be a children's tale, and no one would think twice. You know, of like
Yeah.
what is good, what is bad. You know. Like I don't know.
Yeah. It could be like a Aesop's fable or whatever.
Yeah.
Like a man went out fishing. Like
Yeah. And the moral could be never give up. Like I feel like it's really simple to only take from the story, like never give up, you know. But I feel like there's so many complexities that even I'm totally missing, and I feel like this is why this is a good book to reread. You know, like I feel like at my age where I am right now in life, like I'm probably missing so many really interesting takes on this. And so I definitely one of the books I would definitely love to reread. So happy I have it in my library. But yeah, so any closing notes on this book before we talk about the next one?
No, I think it's pretty good.
So I also wanted to really like acknowledge and say thank you to both of you for, you know, almost always Choksi especially, I mean definitely, but Aditi as you as well, like for definitely, you know, showing up and making this a really fun experience because I have my entire experience with reading has changed completely because of y'all, you know. So thank you for both of y'all reading and
yeah,
stuff.
it's been really cool. Like definitely been reading a lot more than I used to.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I had to zone out for a second. I was like, no more.
No, you're good. No, but
Okay.
so I just want to say thank you. I want to count. I'll make a count by the next time, but I think we're on book like 12 or 13 or 14 now. Like
Yeah, definitely.
a good number of books. So definitely want to count and be like, wow, like it's been a journey. So it's awesome that we keep going and